A woman will never approach you and announce, "I've decided I want you. Do something about it before I reconsider." That's not how female communication operates. But here's what does happen, and this is the part most men completely overlook. Women communicate intention through physical signals that bypass language entirely. I'm talking about a nonverbal vocabulary that women have been using forever to transmit one unmistakable message: I'm open to act on it. If you miss these signals, she won't repeat them. She'll simply redirect that energy elsewhere towards someone who's actually paying attention. Here's something that'll probably frustrate you. Research published in the Journal of Nonverbal Behavior found that women send an average of 5 attraction signals before a man notices even the first one. 5. That means by the time you think she might be interested, she's already been broadcasting it through her body language for the past 20 minutes. And the most revealing signals come from her hands. Not her eyes, not her smile, her hands. Because hands are the one part of the body most people forget to consciously control. Your face can manufacture a polite expression. Your voice can fake enthusiasm. But your hands betray what's actually happening beneath the surface every single time. Today, I'm breaking down 8 hand gestures that reveal when a woman has decided she's attracted to you. 8 physical signals that most men walk right past without a clue. And fair warning, once you learn this, you can't unlearn it. You'll start seeing these signals everywhere. By the end of this, you'll know exactly which gestures mean I'm interested, which ones mean escalate now, and which ones mean you've already missed your window. Stick with me through every point because that 8 one is the most critical, and it's the one that separates men who capitalize on attraction from men who go home wondering what went wrong. Where are you watching from, by the way? Drop your location below. I'm Sarah, host of What She Thinks YouTube channel, and I want you to lean into this for a moment, because this isn't just about decoding women, it's about how many opportunities in life slip past us simply because we weren't trained to see what was right in front of us. Maybe you've been in a situation where you felt something shift in the air, but you second-guessed it. Maybe you walked away from a conversation later thinking, wait, was that something? That uncertainty is exactly where most men stay stuck. So I want you to comment right now and tell me, have you ever missed a moment like that and only realized it afterward? Or have you ever felt confused about whether she was actually interested? Your experience matters here, because once you start seeing these patterns, you'll never look at interaction the same way again. What I'm about to share isn't random opinion or guesswork. It's drawn from decades of observational psychology, behavioral studies, and real-world social dynamics that researchers like Dr. Monica Moore and others have documented in natural environments, cafes, bars, social gatherings, where attraction actually unfolds in real time, not in theory. And I want you to imagine that I'm sitting across from you, talking to you directly, because this is exactly how I'd explain it if we were breaking this down in a one-on-one conversation. No confusion, no fluff, just clarity that helps you understand what's really happening beneath the surface of human behavior. Now let's slow this down and start with something most people completely overlook, even though it happens constantly. Signal 1 is what I call the hair touch with dissent. And I need you to understand something very important before we even break it down. Isolated gestures mean almost nothing. Context is everything. But when certain gestures appear with repetition and timing around you specifically, that's when psychology becomes readable. When a woman is attracted to someone in her environment, one of the most common unconscious behaviors is what researchers describe as self-grooming. She adjusts her appearance without realizing she's doing it. But there's a specific variation that carries more meaning than the rest. She'll lift her hand to her hair near her face or behind her ear, and instead of quickly fixing it and dropping her hand, she slows down. There's a softness in the motion, and often her hand doesn't stop at her hair. It travels downward, lightly brushing along the side of her neck or collarbone before returning to rest. That downward motion is where the signal lives. Because from a psychological standpoint, the neck is one of the most vulnerable areas of the body. Evolutionarily speaking, exposing it signals comfort, openness, and reduced defensive posture. She's not consciously thinking, "I'm signaling trust." Her body is simply revealing what her mind hasn't fully articulated yet. I remember a real-world example from a cafe setting that illustrates this perfectly. A man is sitting across from a woman he just met. She laughs at something he says, then slowly tucks her hair behind her ear. But instead of dropping her hand immediately, she lets it glide down the side of her neck and rests it lightly near her collarbone for a moment longer than necessary. The man doesn't notice. He keeps talking about something neutral, his job, something technical, completely missing the shift in energy. 10 minutes later, she becomes more reserved. Her posture closes slightly. She checks her phone. The moment passes. Nothing went wrong. He just didn't respond to what was already being communicated. And that's the core idea here. These signals are not demands. They are invitations. Now, before we move on, I want you to sit with this question for a second. How many moments in your own life might have been invitations you didn't recognize at the time? Think about it, and if anything comes to mind, share it in the comments. Because the truth is, awareness changes everything. Signal 2 is something far more subtle, and if you've never been taught to look for it, you will absolutely miss it. This is object displacement. When a woman begins lightly tracing her fingers along something in front of her, a wine glass stem, the edge of a cup, a spoon, the rim of a menu, it can look like idle behavior. But psychologically, it often reflects something deeper, redirected tactile energy. In simpler terms, her body wants physical engagement, but the context hasn't yet allowed it. So that energy gets transferred into nearby objects. This is something behavioral studies in social psychology have observed repeatedly. When people experience heightened emotional or attraction-based arousal, they often engage in what researchers call self-soothing or displacement behaviors. It's not random fidgeting. It's the nervous system managing internal activation. Picture a date scenario. She's sitting across from you, listening, engaged, but her fingers are slowly circling the rim of her glass. Not fast, not distracted. Slow, deliberate, almost rhythmic. Most men interpret this as boredom or nervousness, but boredom is usually disengaged and inactive. This is active engagement. There's energy behind it. And here's the part that changes everything. She's not doing it because she's bored. She's doing it because she feels something she cannot yet express physically toward you. And if you respond correctly, if you lean into the conversation, if you subtly escalate comfort, if you match that energy rather than ignore it, you often see that behavior shift outward. The object disappears as a barrier, and direct interaction begins. But most men never make that connection. They just keep talking, unaware that the conversation already has a physical layer happening beneath it. Now let's go one step further, because this is where things start to become unmistakable. Signal 3 is arm contact initiation. This is where theory becomes action. When a woman deliberately touches your arm during conversation, she is not being friendly in a generic sense. She is testing physical boundaries in a controlled, socially acceptable way. A light touch on your forearm while laughing. A brief tap on your shoulder to emphasize a point. A hand that lingers for just a second longer than necessary. These are not accidents. They are micro-experiments. She's asking a silent question through behavior. How do you respond when I enter your space? Do you pull back? Do you freeze? Do you ignore it completely? Or do you stay present, relaxed, grounded? Because your reaction tells her more than anything you say verbally. There's research in Personality and Social Psychology Bulletin showing that light, consensual touch in conversation significantly increases perceived attraction and rapport. What's even more interesting is that it works both ways. The person initiating touch often becomes more attuned to the other person as well. So when she touches your arm, she's not just signaling attraction, she's also shaping the emotional tone between you in real time. And this is where many interactions either deepen or collapse. Because if she reaches out and you do nothing, if you don't acknowledge the shift, if you don't match the energy in your own way, the signal fades. Not dramatically, quietly. And most people never realize what just happened. Signal 4 is the open palm display, and this is one of those signals that is so subtle most men don't even register it as behavior at all. It just looks like someone talking with their hands. But in reality, it can reflect something much deeper: psychological openness and reduced emotional defensiveness in your presence. When a woman uses open palms while speaking, palms facing upward, hands resting openly on the table, or gestures that consistently expose the inner hand rather than conceal it, her body is communicating a lack of guardedness. In behavioral psychology, open palm positioning is associated with honesty, approachability, and lowered threat perception. It's the same instinctive signal humans have used for thousands of years to indicate, I am not hiding anything from you. Now here's where it becomes interesting in a relational context. People don't randomly shift into sustained open body posture with everyone. You might notice someone sits more closed off with strangers, then gradually becomes more open as comfort builds. But when attraction enters the equation, that shift often happens faster and more consistently around a specific person. Let me give you a real-world example. Imagine a casual coffee shop conversation. She starts off with her arms lightly folded, hands tucked closer to her body. But as the conversation flows and she becomes more engaged with you specifically, her hands begin to appear more often on the table. She gestures more openly. Her palms show more frequently as she speaks. There's less concealment, more exposure. Most people miss this entirely because they're focused on words. But the body is telling a parallel story. And it's important not to oversimplify this as, if palms open, she likes you. That would be incorrect. What matters is change in baseline behavior. If someone becomes noticeably more open in their hand positioning, specifically in your presence, that shift is what carries meaning. Psychologically, this connects to something called interpersonal trust calibration. Humans constantly adjust their body language based on perceived safety in an interaction. When someone feels neutral, their body stays neutral. When they feel guarded, their body protects itself. When they feel comfortable or intrigued enough to lower defenses, you see openness increase. And attraction often accelerates that process. But here's the nuance most people miss. Openness doesn't always mean immediate intention. It means receptivity. She is more psychologically available in that moment, which creates the conditions for deeper connection if the interaction continues in the right direction. Now let's move into signal 5, which is where things start to cross the line from subtle psychological cues into direct physical engagement. Signal 5 is finger graze contact. This is one of the clearest behavioral shifts because it involves crossing an invisible but very real boundary. Intentional contact. When a woman finds a reason to touch your hand, whether she's comparing hand sizes, briefly reading your palm as a joke, or letting her fingers brush yours while handing you something, she is actively choosing physical contact in a way that is not required by the situation. Think about that for a moment. Most daily interactions never require hand-to-hand contact beyond necessity. So when it happens in a social setting, especially when it lingers even slightly, it carries meaning. In neuroscience, touch activates the release of oxytocin, sometimes called the bonding hormone. Even brief, light contact can create a subtle emotional imprint. It doesn't mean instant attachment or romantic commitment, but it does create a neurological association between that person and a feeling of connection. And this is where the interaction becomes very dynamic. Because when she initiates that kind of contact, she is also observing you. Not just your reaction, but your presence in the moment. Do you pull away quickly? Do you freeze? Do you acknowledge it calmly? Do you reciprocate naturally? Your response becomes part of the communication loop. Let me give you a simple example. You're sitting across from her, conversation flowing. She laughs, reaches out, lightly taps your hand while making a point. It lasts maybe 1 second. A lot of men unintentionally break the moment here. They pull back immediately, shift their hands, or act as if nothing happened but internally become tense. That reaction sends a signal too, but not the one they think. Because what she's really testing is comfort with closeness. Now contrast that with a grounded response. You stay relaxed. You don't overreact. You allow the moment to exist without turning it into something awkward or forced. That calm presence communicates something powerful, emotional stability. And emotional stability is one of the most attractive traits in social psychology because it reduces uncertainty in interaction. But there's another layer here that people rarely talk about. When mutual touch happens, even brief, it creates what researchers call shared sensory anchoring. Both people register the moment physically, and it subtly strengthens memory encoding of the interaction. This is why some conversations feel more memorable than others, even if nothing important was said. The nervous system remembers contact differently than words. Now moving forward, signal 6 is where the body begins to reveal something even more primal. This is wrist exposure. The inner wrist is one of the most vulnerable visual points of the human body. Thin skin, visible veins, and an inherent lack of protection make it psychologically significant. That's why, across evolutionary behavior studies, exposing the wrists is associated with openness and reduced threat awareness. When a woman naturally turns her wrist toward you while talking, resting her arm in a way that exposes the inner side, or casually adjusting something while keeping her wrist visible in your direction, it often reflects a lowered defensive posture in your presence. Again, this is not about a single gesture. It's about repetition and context. If her body consistently orients in a way that exposes vulnerable areas toward you, it suggests her nervous system is not perceiving you as a threat, and in some cases is actively comfortable or engaged enough to remain open. Let me ground this in a real-world scenario. Two people are sitting at a table. One person's arms are closed, wrists turned inward, hands hidden or protected. The other gradually shifts as comfort increases. Hands on the table, wrists visible, gestures relaxed and open toward the other person. Most observers won't consciously notice this transition, but subconsciously, it changes how the interaction feels. One feels closed, the other feels accessible. And in attraction dynamics, accessibility often matters more than intensity. Now, we're building toward the more revealing signals, the ones that involve reciprocal behavior and intentional escalation. Because once you understand how openness, contact initiation, and mirroring work together, you start to see the full pattern instead of isolated gestures. And that's where everything becomes much clearer.